sustainable cultures have all experienced and engaged with what we would now call animism, which is the perceived and lived actuality of the weather responding to our thoughts, the plants responding to our thoughts, the animals, the soil, the water responding to our thoughts. And so once we allow our imagination to engage and recognize that the imagination is real, is the most powerful organ of the psyche, is the point not where we create fantasy, but where we engage with relationship, then we can truly communicate with plants and animals and all of their environment.
That was Dr. Patrick McManaway, and you're listening to The Regenerative Journey.
G'day, I'm your host Charlie Arnott, an 8th generational Australian regenerative farmer. And in this podcast series, I'll be diving deep and exploring my guests' unique perspectives on the world so you can apply their experience and knowledge to cultivate your own transition to a more regenerative way of life.
Welcome to The Regenerative Journey with your host, Charlie Arnott.
G'day, welcome back to The Regenerative Journey and welcome to this wonderful interview with Dr. Patrick McManaway. He has been on my radar for so many years now to interview. I did meet Patrick many years ago, having done his first level 1 subtle energy workshop at a monastery near here, from near Bora, actually, Galang Monastery. This is going back, could be 10 years. And ever since I started the podcast, Patrick has been up the top of the list of people to track down. COVID did put a spanner on the works because Patrick doesn't live in Australia. He spends some of his time in Vermont in the States and some time at Edinburgh in Scotland. So I was very fortunate to track him down in late April this year, 2025, down in Tasmania at Mona Vale and near the town of Ross, when I did with Lilla, my daughter, my third level 1. How bad's that? It became a bit of a coarse joke, the fact that I was there for the third time. But it had been 10 years since I did the first one. Great excuse to catch up with Patrick and his wonderful team at Quantum Leap Subtle Energy. The wonderful new but a new branded sort of business and organisation, which I've been very supportive of. And I can't tell you how wonderful the team there are in getting Patrick out twice a year now and having some very, very astute practitioners themselves. If you're wondering what subtle energy is all about and what Patrick teaches, well, you'll just have to hang around for a bit longer and listen to the interview. But very fortunate to interview Patrick. It was the end of the last day, so I think it was a 2.5-day course. We had a pretty big couple of days. We were sitting at the wonderful property at Mona Vale there in Tasmania. As I said, the Cameron family, very generous to host that and to allow me the time. They'd all headed down to the pub for a feed. We had a little cheeky whiskey. We did have some, surprise, some technical difficulties which we got around. I think the Wi-Fi wasn't working very well, then my camera and the phone and the whole thing. Be assured, I trust this is the last interview you'll ever listen to where I'm whinging about technical difficulties, because I've got a very cool little thing I'm recording with right now, the Osmo DJI Osmo handheld thing, which does it all. It does the audio, does the video, and the whole thing is awesome. But back to the interview. So we had a wonderful chat. I think we've managed to sort of splice the parts together that we had to, due to some of the hiccups we had. But it was a very wonderful yarn, as I said, one that I've been waiting to do for many, many years. Patrick it seems like Patrick's in this constant state of not meditation, but this sort of reverence and grace, which when you listen to the rest of the interview, you'll really get what I'm talking about. That he is extraordinary. He's one of a kind, and I can't tell you enough. I can't support you enough in anyone's thinking about doing some of the workshops with Patrick and his wonderful team. We'll get to that at some point in terms of the website and so on. It'll be in the show notes, but this is an amazing chat we went all over the place too. Patrick does go all over the cosmos and back to Earth occasionally, but this is a really good yarn. Really enjoyed Patrick's company in the interview, but any other time I get to hang out with Patrick, he's just an awesome human being. And please enjoy this episode of The Regenerative Journey with Dr. Patrick McManaway. Patrick, welcome to The Regenerative Journey and welcome to the sitting room here at Mona Vale in Tasmania.
Absolute pleasure to be with you, Charlie.
Well, it's been my pleasure to be with you for the last 2 days at your Quantum Leap Level 1 or Quantum Leap Subtle Energy Level 1 course. It's still called Level 1?
Foundations course.
Foundations.
Yes.
Got to get up with that, which we were laughing yesterday that it's my third attempt. But I had to blame you for it being 3 times because you're such a wonderful presenter. There's always something new.
Well, either that or I'm just not doing a good job, Charlie.
No, you're doing an amazing job. Patrick, we are here, as I've just mentioned, for foundation course, Quantum Leap Subtle Energy, which is a new organisation we might get to. Actually, I did interview
Gary gave a good description of that.
He was great.
Yes.
Yeah, what a lovely bloke.
Yes, that was a lovely interview. Well done with that.
Well, he's easy to talk to. Mm-hmm. So we won't dwell on that too much, as in we might touch on it while we're here and what's part of the course, but I've got a lot of questions. I'm conscious of time. We've got friends on their way to Oatlands to the pub where we'll be going in about an hour's time. So I'm conscious we've only got a little bit of time together, which does give me the opportunity to go to Vermont or Edinburgh in the next 12 months, I hope. Patrick, as you know, the podcast is called The Regenerative Journey. I want to hear a bit about your regenerative journey. And can we start, there's lots I want to ask you about, but let's start with where did little Patrick appear in the world? Where was day one?
Yes.
We had a birthday yesterday, which I want to get back to, but so there's significance in that. But where did you appear in the world? In what sort of environment?
Yes. Well, I was born as a small child.
For the how many times? The 23rd time?
Surprised and delighted parents. No, I was home delivery to vegetarian yoga teacher mum, and timed out to the second so that they could get the astrology done. So my parents at the time had established, I came in 1967. In 1959, Mum and Dad had established a centre in rural Scotland for spiritual healing and mediumship to both practice and train people. And that extended very much into, at the time, the renaissance and development of alternative medicine, holistic therapies. And so they were interested in natural therapies, natural medicine, and as lay practitioners, really working with what we would now call life force energies, and as Dad would just call the celestial civil service, for really guidance in life, for guidance especially in healing and healthcare, and in the renaissance of the commonplace spirituality and gifts of spirit for the everyday woman and man. Context, Charlie, was witchcraft laws in the UK were abolished only in 1952. And prior to that, Mum and Dad, both for decades, had been involved in natural therapies, spiritual healing, mediumship, different kinds of, and felt strongly called, once the witchcraft laws were abolished and replaced by the Fraudulent Mediums Act, to bring this back into the community in a strong and authentic way, to share that work and empower people to connect with spirit and use their gifts of healing and mediumship in everyday context, in everyday life.
So they would have been deemed what they were doing before 1956 too?
1952, yeah.
52, that what their activities would have been deemed witchcraft. Was that right? Is that right? That was the significance of that being abolished and them being able to then...
Yes, it was. So I think, as in many cultures, esoteric knowledge had been nurtured, cultivated, practiced quietly in family circles, in closed circles, closed rooms. In America, it was open and free, but in Europe and England particularly, not so, unless one was ordained clergy, Catholic or Protestant.
The official witchcraft.
The official, exactly. We could possibly cynically call it trades unionism, but I'm sure, depending on where one stood, one would have a different opinion and attitude towards that. But certainly kept separate from and denied to the common people like you and I in our everyday lives. And so practices of divination, the use of dowsing for finding water, for finding minerals, for finding and locating missing people, missing things, the use of plant medicines, and the use of the simple gift of natural healing were all very much contained within clergy and medical professions at the time. So really it was the dawn of what we might now consider a renaissance or a new age, and coincided with sort of social liberation of the 1960s and exploration of consciousness through introduction of Eastern practices of yoga, of Qigong, of Tai Chi, of meditation, a great fascination, I think, in the 60s and 70s with the emergence of Buddhism coming out of Tibet, consequent to the Chinese invasion and the displacement of the community there. And then in the 70s and 80s, a great interest in Native American spirituality. So I think it was a very fascinating and heady couple of decades of sudden openness and exploration of all manner of what at the time in Britain, post-Empire Britain, would have been sort of non-traditional, non-conformist, but very authentic spiritual seeking.
And you were in the middle of that.
I grew up in the middle of it. Yes.
And you have siblings. Are you the youngest?
I'm the youngest of three.
Yeah.
So we were all brought up with metaphysics, spirituality, healing, discussed at kitchen table. And because it was a teaching center as well as a practicing center, there were always students around, up to 7 or 8 full-time residential students, and many people coming for courses and conferences and workshops. So we would average probably a dozen to 15 around the kitchen table for meals, and the interest was in all of the subtle energy world. So it was simply the family culture, and we grew up knowing nothing else.
What a wonderful, nurturing environment. So different from, I suspect, everyone who was at the course today, certainly mine, which is not, it was very conventional. So Patrick appeared in that wonderful, nurturing environment. Where were you? You're in Edinburgh? No.
North of Edinburgh, 45 minutes to drive, rural Fife, little village called Strathmiglo, about 20 miles inland of St Andrews.
Oh, nice.
So north of Edinburgh, south of Perth, rolling rural agricultural landscape, very beautiful. gentle climate, 4 seasons climate, and deep soils, grain and dairy, breadbasket of Scotland. Lovely.
And then, so schooling, was that did you just go to school? Were you homeschooled or what happened?
No, we went to school and in and out of private and public sector. Brothers went boarding school. I didn't want to leave home because I loved the family culture, and we had ponies and dogs and chickens and geese, and it was good at home, and I loved the family vibe. So I was allowed to stay as a day boy, which meant going to our local state-sponsored comprehensive school. But the academics were good, and it let me stay home and participate and learn from the parents.
And you went to the medical school after that. Your father was he a doctor?
Father was military.
He wasn't a doctor?
Not at all.
I think he was a doctor.
No, quite the opposite, Charlie. He was a military brat, son of military officer.
Was he strict?
Well, aged 8 to 18, he'd been in military academy, and then war broke out when he was 19, so he went off with the British Expeditionary Force. His mum had been a trance medium, and so he got a little bit of coaching in that realm, but he definitively discovered gift of healing age 19, rearguard action at Dunkirk, and compelled to put his hands on wounded comrades, and astonished to find cessation of pain, cessation of blood loss, and keeping them alive rather than they're going into shock states. And that really was what opened his mind. And the military was very open to psychic practices then, certainly, and I think perhaps quietly around the world, variously still now. And so he developed his healing and mediumship practices whilst a regular officer for 20 years, going across North Africa. Literally every single night the officers had a seance, using those techniques to establish enemy troop positions, numbers,
Wow.
Tanks, artillery, ordnance, etc. And he was involved in experiments of using dowsing to locate ships at sea. And
is there a book about this? Is this a documented thing?
It's variously documented. Mostly, I think it was very quietly done. But the psychic effort and use of esoteric magic during Second World War, but also in basically all previous conflicts, had been very widely spread.
Yeah.
Yes. Brewing up storms to disperse the Spanish Armada, and
Didn't Churchill have someone put a bubble over London or England?
Churchill was very involved and was directing a group of inner psychics, Wellesley Tudor Pole, Dion Fortune and others, were the high adepts of the day, and the whole of the nation poured its psychic energy to their use during the period that it took Big Ben to chime 9 o'clock.
Right.
They had a 2-minute national time of prayer, and that energy was then used and directed by Churchill's adepts.
Was that a daily thing? Everyone knew when wow, that's pretty powerful, isn't it?
Very powerful. No, a nation under threat and duress really pulls all the stops out, and whether you think it's rational or not at that point doesn't matter.
Just like with any tool in the box.
Any tool in the box, I think so. And so if it works, we'll use it. So very interesting times and stories come out of that time in terms of use of psychic espionage, psychic misinformation, psychic disinformation, because both sides were very engaged with that.
And was it today or yesterday, you said you had an early retirement party. You want to tell us about that?
Well, growing up with this rich mix of practical spirituality and alternative holistic therapies practiced on people and animals and places, I was just on team from the get-go. I wanted to join in and participate. And at the time, Britain wasn't yet a member of the European Union, but there was an anticipation of joining, which obviously we did for a period of time. But alternative medicine, whilst it was permissible and unregulated in the UK, was highly regulated in, at the time, both France and Germany. And even alternative medicines were not legally allowed to be practiced unless one had a medical degree.
Is the German hang up with that? Is that a hangover from? Because I know Hitler wasn't a big fan of that sort of stuff. Well, he knew all about it, but he was trying to squash it, wasn't he? Was that a bit of a hangover, or?
That part I'm not quite clear on. The Germans, I think, had a 3-year health practitioner training that was required. The French wanted a full medical license. Okay. So anticipating that, parents recommended I get a medical degree and a license so that I could then safely practice complementary therapies for the rest of my life.
Okay.
So that was the agenda. Went and had 6 years in Edinburgh, getting medically trained, and then working for a year with National Health Services as junior doctor until I got my license, and then a retirement party followed.
Earliest
and I was free to pursue other practices. I did end up doing another 8 months of National Health Service medicine while I explored and tracked down further training in the holistic environmental work that I do now, and that was actually very lovely. It was 8 months of work in the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland in a very lovely community and very beautiful circumstances. But yes, during that time I'd found a training that I wanted to take in Vermont, which was a 2-year apprenticeship.
Because I know so your association with the Vermont goes all the way back to then.
Even before, American Society of Dowsers is headquartered in Vermont.
Yeah, right.
And Dad had been keynote speaker for them in 1984. And I was taking a gap year between high school and medical school that year, and had gone over and spent 10 weeks on a friend's tree farm. Which then was my first falling in love with farm work and agriculture. And when I went back 92 to 94, I was able to live and work on the same farm whilst I took my apprenticeship in the construction and uses of sacred space, which includes studies in earth energy dowsing, but also astronomy, astrology, sacred geometry, and the wisdom traditions of Native American, Celtic, and Norse, and a little bit the Western mystery tradition also. But it was a wonderful combination, Charlie, because I got to study the esoteric and then put it to work on the farm.
Is that where you were digging up trees?
Yes.
And singing to them?
Yes.
And then, because that's something I often quote, and we did all that today with the sentience of plants and everything, which is a whole other podcast series, pretty much. But that was a fascinating thing. Can you tell us that story?
Yes, I had grown up not in an agricultural framework at all, and so working, labouring on this tree farm was really my first introduction, and I didn't know any different. But the farmer, Steve, lovely human being, had grown up on the farm, taken a degree in English literature, was a poet, a songster, deep philosophical thinker. And so when we would go into the forest, we would start by pausing, centering ourselves, opening our minds, communicating with the spirit of the place, spirit of the forest, let it know what we were coming to do, which in this circumstance was coming to dig native saplings from the forest and wrap them in root balls and then take them into care and subsequently move them on and sell them to nurseries and landscaping companies to be planted out as ornamentals. And so we would presence ourselves, we would communicate, we would have a little pray, we'd go into the forest, and then we would only ever work with hand tools, so there were no power tools, and we would sing while we worked. And partly that was just fun and it made the day go along. And also it was very practical and helpful because sometimes we were 2 or 3 or 4 of us lifting heavy things together. And just like a sea shanty, if you're all singing along, then you're all lifted, in rhythm together. And so the lift went well and nobody was out of sync and nobody got hurt. So, but I'd never done any other farm work any other way. So I kind of thought this was just what you did on a farm. I learned differently subsequently, but I had a moment of revelation, Charlie, when on one occasion we were delivering 450 trees to a big landscaping yard 3 hours south of us. And so we'd gone down and transported the trees, and just circumstantially I ended up offloading them shoulder to shoulder with the site manager of the yard, and he was very concerned to let me know that their industry standard was a 10% wastage on trees that came in, so they expected and experienced 10% of all the trees that were delivered to them to die, and that in 15 years he'd never lost a single tree from my boss.
Is that right?
And he really wanted me to know that. This was remarkable and clearly exceptional in his mind.
Did he want to know why?
No, he didn't know why. He assumed, and I have to assume also, that Steve was just very careful and meticulous in every way, and only let trees off farm that he was confident would survive and thrive. But even so, to lose none in 15 years against an industry standard of 10%, it just left me thinking something really different is happening here. And the love and the care and the singing was the only thing apparent to me that would be in any way different from any other nursery.
So what is it about the singing and the love that I mean, obviously other people weren't doing it, but why would that have?
Why would that make a difference? So that and subsequent studies and practice and experience has led me into a deep awareness and pragmatic experience of the degree to which plants are sentient and truly understand our thoughts, understand our feelings, have capacity to adapt their metabolism, their expressed physiological features, and just like an animal or a person, they respond to our love. They hear and understand our thoughts. If we listen carefully with deep listening, we can allow them to put thoughts and feelings and communications back into our minds, so we can have a deep and highly cooperative and constructive conversation with plants, as indeed we can with animals, with birds, with rivers, with weather. I've really personally experienced in a very practical and pragmatically useful way the true sentience that's held in reverence by indigenous cultures all over the world, including our own European ancestry, who are in endless communication with their landscape and the landscape intelligences that go by the various name, the Sidhe of Scotland, the elf, the gnome, the fairy, the sylph. These aren't fantasy figures for children's stories. These are powerful elemental forces with full consciousness and powerful agency. And we live in and by their grace. And if we humbly connect and ask and communicate with them, they can help us out in unbelievable ways. And if we don't, then they can if we don't do that, we miss a trick or two. And by not being in dialogue with our landscape, we end up acting in disconnected ways that create harm and injury to ourselves as well as the landscape, and put us into an unsustainable relationship with it. But sustainable cultures all over the world, one of the primary paradigms that allows sustainability is the awareness and actuated skill of landscape communication. And that's what keeps us in balance with our environment at the most fundamental level, I think.
And this level one or foundational course that we're in the middle of, it's 3 days, so there's a lot in it. What can, I mean, I guess I'm just sort of dangling the carrot for listeners and viewers, like what would be, just give them a sense of whether it's stage one or step one into relationship with landscape. What sort of a mind headspace does one need to be in, or is there a without going through every single step, because there's I guess a bit of a thing to it, but where would people want to start to even just get in, well, I guess in that state of grace?
In terms of practicing at home?
Yeah, you're just sort of thinking, okay, I want to get one step closer to that appreciation and that acknowledgement. Absolutely. And that sort of, awareness.
Yes. So
apart from, I'm highly encouraging everyone to go and do the course. But actually, maybe don't say anything, so that people will have to go to the course. No, give them a little. Let's bait them a bit.
I think. Truly, Charlie, the connection with the intelligences of landscape, the connection of the intelligences of our ancestors, of the angelic community, it's truly and literally the most natural thing of all that we can possibly do. And so we don't need to go on a course or a workshop. We simply need to allow ourselves to authentically engage with our intuition, with our instinct, with our innate wisdom. It's got us through the last 500,000 years, and it'll get us through the next 2 or 3 million years if we simply keep doing what we always did. And for 99% of human history, we've lived in circular time, where we understand that all all projects, all endeavors, all activities follow a circular path. The circle of the breath, the circle of the heartbeat, the circle of the day, the circle of the season, the circle of the year. And sustainable cultures have all experienced and engaged with what we would now call animism, which is the perceived and lived actuality of the weather responding to our thoughts, the plants responding to our thoughts, the animals, the soil, the water responding to our thoughts. And so once we allow our imagination to engage and recognize that the imagination is real, is the most powerful organ of the psyche, is the point not where we create fantasy, but where we engage with relationship. Then we can truly communicate with plants and animals and all of their environment. And historically, as stewards, that was our responsible role. And I like to quote the tradition of Celtic kingship in Scotland and the Celtic lands, which was not an inherited or executive function, but was an elected and ambassadorial function. And so drawn from the wisest, most peaceful, most connected members of the community, kingship involved in Scotland 8 times a year, going to our central sacred mountain, Schiehallion, and engaging in deep meditation and direct communication with the queen of the Sidhe, the queen of the nature spirit and elemental community of that landscape. And then coming down the mountain after their journey of shamanic connection and sharing with the people how many deer could be taken from the forest, how many salmon could be taken from the river, how many cows, how many sheep could be supported by the landscape, when to plant, when to harvest. And in this way, the people were governed by the landscape intelligence, and the role of that ambassadorial function was to ensure intimate communication so that the people literally lived in a sustainable way. And so we look for our leaders now to do the same job. Not to sit and think alone in an isolated space, but to be in deep connection with the governing agencies that support human life in the landscape, not to either think that they're to be taken for granted and also not to think that they're inanimate and non-negotiable or exploitable resource. And once you experience for the first time, as we have in the workshop here, the transformation that can occur, we've had our beverage blessing experience where,
yeah, that's great.
By sharing love and then communication with vegetable and fruit juice, we've experienced changes in flavor, changes in texture.
I'm just waiting to turn the colour to go from green to red.
Well, you just need to take a little bit longer working at it.
Because the first time I saw you do that was at the Gaylong Monastery with red wine.
Yes,
that was a very interesting place. For that to,
in many ways,
in many ways, yeah. But that was fascinating. I often reference that one. So that's a very tangible application.
That's very tangible, and when we do that on farm, we see the response of stock. One of my favourite stories is we shared the blessing of a borehole that was feeding water to troughs in half of 120 paddocks on a rotationally grazing sheep farm. So 60 of the paddocks had water in troughs from the borehole, and the other 60 paddocks the sheep were drinking from dams. And after a field day where we communicated with the spirit of the borehole and acknowledged it, gave it gratitude, graded it love, communicated that it was primarily being used to nurture the mob of sheep. And we did a before and after taste, and it was rather ordinary before we started, and it was rather good when we finished. But immediately after having done that, the sheep who'd previously shown little or no preference between dam water and trough water, immediately, when let out of a dam-watered paddock, galloped as a mob straight and directly to the trough, up to 1.4 kilometers in some cases. And they kept on doing this every time they were let into a trough paddock for 6 months. And then we got back to the farm and extended the work and blessed all the dams, and just as instantly as it had started, the behavior stopped, and the sheep no longer showed any preference for trough over dam water.
That was simply blessing.
That was simply blessing the water,
which is a process
first in the trough,
process
and then
of
in the dams.
Without, again, it's a bit of a thing. But what does blessing at Boer look like?
Yes, so the great human superpower is our capacity to direct loving attention. And we have this gift of free will, and we have the gift of being able to direct simple, pure love. And when we combine those two, we can really create extraordinary results in our own lives, in every sphere of our life, in every relationship that we have, as well as in landscape. And so a true blessing, I think, is when we simply, without agenda, give love to another being, whether person, plant, animal, or place. And having done that, giving pure, unagendered love allows a thing to be holy and fully and simply itself, in its most solid and secure way. So often that's enough, and we can leave it there. But once we've truly blessed a thing and exchanged love, it leaves us with a deep rapport and compassion with it. And that allows us also to have communication and conversation with it, either through direct telepathy or through muscle testing or dowsing or other practices pertaining, and communicate our specific needs. So in this case, we were hoping that this water would become particularly delicious and nourishing for sheep. In another circumstance, we might have been asking the water to be optimum for irrigating crops, or for nurturing human beings, or for any of the things that we might need water for. So a true and simple blessing is an exchange of unconditional love, but that then also creates the space for us to have conversation and communication for a particular purpose of the day.
In this case, it was delicious sheep water.
Delicious sheep water. And we can do this at home, Charlie, and it's been done many times, and the beautiful photographs of Dr. Emoto showing the coherence arising in crystalline water with the application of love. We can take seeds and germinate them on a couple of trays in the kitchen and give loving attention to one tray of seeds and the water that we water that with, and then the second tray of seeds, just water it the same, but give it no love, ignore it, otherwise, and then after 10 days measure the germinated weight of the seeds and measure the roots and the shoots, and we typically see about a 30% germination difference. Quite extraordinary. In other circumstances, on farm, slightly different application, but working with power center of natural earth energies and a lot of intention. One of the farms that I was working with was included in a trial of dry rice growing in by the University of Vermont's Agricultural Extension Program. And 5 farms were involved, and on 4 farms they achieved a 25% germination rate. And on the farm that what I was working with, using refined and focused earth energies and a small simple stone circle and a lot of love and intention, we got a 100% germination rate. And so to move from 25% to 100% germination rate with love and intention and the use of subtle energies clearly is tremendously helpful.
Something in it.
On a farm. But the application of this awareness goes, from farm to business to family to office. It's simply a universal set of principles of relationship.
This episode of The Regenerative Journey is proudly brought to you by Quantum Leap Subtle Energy. Subtle energy might sound mystical, but it's actually deeply practical. At Quantum Leap Subtle Energy, they show you how working with subtle energy can improve health, landscapes, and livelihoods. As a listener of The Regenerative Journey, you'll receive a 50% discount when you sign up for membership and gain lifetime access to recordings, resources, and discounted pricing for their workshops and events. And I've been to plenty, and I can guarantee they are absolutely wonderful. Take the first step into a world of possibility. Visit www.quantumleapsubtleenergy.com.au/membership to get started. Use the promo code podcast during checkout. I want to go to, we talked today, you spoke today about intelligence of anything and everything, anything that, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but anything that vibrates, which everything is, has an intelligence. There's an innate intelligence, and so if everything has an intelligence, whether it's the lamp, the rock, the plant, what we would call a living or a non-living thing, anything, and you spoke a lot about free will today. If something has an innate intelligence, does it also have free will?
To the extent that it can exercise it, I think it does.
Yeah. So a lamp just can't jump across the
It doesn't.
room.
It doesn't have an
keeping an eye on
opportunity
that
to
one.
move itself, does it?
No. Well, hang on. Well,
or does it?
Or does it?
Well,
given the plant experiment.
It's a bit of a deep question, Charlie.
We can move it to part 2.
Well,
I'll catch up with you in Vermont. We can defer.
Well, certainly with plants, that's very easy because it's very direct and experiential, and as you've heard now a number of times, my favorite story of the 2 fields of lucerne side by side. Planted same day, same seed, same operator, same equipment, being mob grazed by a small herd of dairy cows, and going across in strips. The first field, everything was good. First strip, second field, 7 out of 20 cows showing signs of bloat. Which is, as you know, being a cow man, is a lethal and rapid onset disease of cows based on inability to digest their feed, and often occurs on lucerne. And so managers generally keep a very close eye on cows when they go into lucerne first, in case this happens. So first field, no problem. Second field, 7 out of 20 cows rapidly showing signs of lethal toxicity from the plant. So cows are taken off the field, put into the barn, drenched with vegetable oil, which resolved the problem, but then indigestible field, very significant at the time in their forage budget. It was the last green feed that they had before going onto dry for the winter months. So they asked me to come and look at it. I was nearby and came quickly and just engaged, as we've been sharing, with direct telepathic communication with the agencies of intelligence of plant and field and soil. And so in a meditative process, quieting the mind, getting into what we'd call a grace space, and then literally and clearly and specifically bring into mind all the intelligences involved, being the intelligence or spirit of the farm, of the field, of the soil, of the lucerne, of the cows, and the overlighting governing intelligences. St. Bridget in the British lands is considered to be the deity governing the health of cattle and sheep. So inviting those agencies into the powerful space of the imaginal realm and really having a roundtable conversation with them. And immediately apparent in that conversation was that the first field had recognized its presence and was cooperatively engaged in the agricultural rotation. So it was clear and happily engaged with that it was planted to be food for cows, and that once it had been browsed, it would be replanted in rotational succession. And so its presence in the landscape was being supported and encouraged by its participation in the nutrition of cows. The second field hadn't got that messaging somehow, thought that it was wild crop and that these were random feral predators that had moved in, and had mobilized deliberately and at its discretion the so-called secondary metabolites, which are the library of phenols, tannins, and other substances that plants rapidly create and put into leaf and shoot and root in order to make themselves unpalatable, undigestible, in this case lethally toxic to the aphid, the locust, the pest, or the predatorial herbivore. And so in the imaginal, meditative, communicative space, discussed this with the plants, with the soil, with the paddock, and once they were clear, they were happy to support the agricultural process. And we left it for 12 hours, and then John, farming there, put the cows back into the field, and sure enough, they were able to graze over the next week the whole of the field without any further incident or injury. And so many stories subsequently, but that one's quite elegant and beautiful because it lets us know I sat in meditation and communicated in the space of the imagination. The plants heard me, understood me, had the capacity to change, and bless them, chose to do so to our convenience as people. And the depth of awe and gratitude that arises from that is infinite. Just realizing that nature can truly support us and if we respectfully, humbly ask for that, it happens. And it also, Charlie, left me with a deep awareness of that plants can deliberately make themselves toxic if they don't recognize and aren't communicated with by ourselves. And I think historically, go back, 200-300 years, we were in constant communication with landscape, and our farming was called husbandry, which is speaking to the intimate emotional communication and relationship between farmer and land. And now, over the last 100 years, we've been practicing agricultural science, which is objectifying and disconnecting from the sentience of the plants and even to some degree the animals that we're stewarding. And I think under those circumstances, the plants are literally making themselves toxic because they experience us as feral predators, and the extraordinary increase in allergies and food toxicity, I think, is perhaps substantially generated by our no longer communicating with the plants in the field.
And that's just obviously a natural defence mechanism that we can't blame them for utilising.
Absolutely, their natural thing to do.
And if we haven't, as you have done, and we talked about today, and you've done work on a number of landscapes that we are stewarding, you inform, because I hadn't, the new situation. And sometimes those situations are new, as in a new owner of land and a new purpose for that land. And in some situations it was going as far back to say that, the whiteys are here and there are now boundaries, and there's new intention, a new, agricultural practice, and that's kind of a new management practice of landscape, as opposed to the landscape not having boundaries, being looked after and managed by, the indigenous brothers and sisters of ours, and that they still thinking that was what was happening to them. That place at Byron Bay that you went to some years ago, that was a great example of letting them know that things are a little different now, and that, but that was okay. Not to be fearful, not that was just a new, probably not set of rules, but a new environment and a new framework for I guess, the nature spirit, the spirit of place to exist in, and you had the chat and you enrolled them to the idea that there were now boundaries, which is fascinating. I just love it's a real pity that, more people don't have that skill, because not many people do, unless they've been here, of course, that there must be so much landscape, just, in Australia, let's just stay there, that is confused with this new domesticated sheep and cattle. What are they? The plough, the fence line, the dwelling, the well, the road, that all this disturbance that it is still trying to come to terms with. And no wonder that it's not, you could argue that it's not cooperating, and you can't blame it for that, could you? It's a total disturbance of everything it knows.
I think, as you describe, it's a disorientation. Often I think of my role as being a marriage counsellor. I'm mediating the relationship between people and place, which I think is truly one of the most intimate relationships that we have. And same rules as marriage apply. We want dignity, respect, love, care, and clear communication. And a landscape has huge longevity, it has psychic mass and inertia, and it will continue to hold the memory of the last conversation that it had. And in Europe, we had 6,500 years of sustainable agriculture, and that was very much based on the quarter and quarterly festivals of landscape connection, communication, where we very consciously as a community feasted, communicated, blessed, talked to the nature spirits, blessing of the wells, blessing of the fields, blessing of the crops, blessing of the harvest, blessing of the plough, the communication with the weather, with the plants and animals. And so always it was normal to be in constant and repeated communication to make sure that the landscape knew what we were up to and we knew what the landscape was up to. It's a dialogue between, management agencies. And so if you don't do that, then it's like, having staff that you never talk to and being surprised when they don't know what to do. So we think of, the relationship with place as historically being Aboriginal, which indeed it is, but it's also been universal. And whoever is on the land today needs to talk to the land today. Because if he doesn't know who's here and what's happening, it can't respond, and it can't communicate back and let us know its needs to support health and sustainability for soil and plant and animal. So it's very two-way process. It needs us to be in relationship with it as much as we need it to be in relationship with us. And nothing more natural, nothing more simple, nothing more joyful. And just extraordinary results that we can get when we do that.
I want to get back to you, Patrick. You had a birthday yesterday, and I haven't done the maths.
58.
58. No, that's got that. But how many lots of sevens in 58?
Oh,
where are you up to on that scale?
My Saturn return.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
28, 56. How many sevens is that?
7 sevens are 49. 8. No, is that right?
8, 7.
No, it can't be right. 7 sevens are not 49. Someone's going to flog me for that one. Are they?
I think so.
My times tables. So but you know what you know in the Saturn return.
Saturn return, I think, is hitting in sort of,
You got a few to go.
56.
You've got. Tell me, you may not have had time to think about it because it was only yesterday, and you've been up to your elbows with course. Where does that put you apart from Saturn return? But what does that mean for you? Is it what period of your life are you in now? Is there a new chapter? What chapter do you think you're in, and are you in the chapter you think you need to be in right now?
Great question, Charlie.
I should have given you that on notice.
No. Well, second Saturn return, it does get your attention. It seems that my work is being very fully embraced and supported as never before. We mentioned at the beginning the creation of this non-profit here in Australia, Quantum Leap Subtle Energy, which is totally dedicated to expanding and supporting the knowledge and the practice and far beyond what I'm bringing, but sort of originally initiated through the work that I brought. And so it's thrilling to see just such a deepening and broadening and expansion of the support and sharing of the simple, natural, authentic practices. And the same thing's happening to me in the UK. I've now moved from being a rather solitary practitioner to being tremendously supported by 2-3 organizations there that are hosting the work and extending it and expanding it and bringing it open to other practitioners and teachers as well as myself. And in the US also a lot of support for the work. So looks like I get to keep on doing what I'm doing, but with more support and moving a bit slower, spending more time, which is nice, not having to move quite so fast, not quite so frantic. So sort of deepening and expanding of what I've been doing. It's really very lovely.
Are you encouraged by all that?
Tremendously.
Yeah.
No, I enjoy the work that I do. It's work that I chose to do, that I felt called to do. It's incredibly rewarding and joyous. And to see it rippling, and also to feel that I'm definitely just a small part of a massive groundswell of emerging consciousness that you are so connected to and representative of. The expansion of all regenerative practices, of biodynamics, of holistic thinking and community work. I think probably more than anybody in this country, Charlie, you're connected to all the things that I'm a small part of, and just seeing how that emergence of consciousness and practice and the restoration of relationship with community and land it's just thrilling to be part of that. And
tell us about quantum leap, subtle energy. Did, as we mentioned earlier, I spoke with Gary about it, but I guess that's great support organisation for you here. And obviously started with Terry McCosker and RCS, and really got some runway there with those guys, and it sort of matured or got to a point where it sort of deserved its own little thing. But there's in the course we're at, and the I won't call it a textbook, but the manual, I guess, the development is really solidifying the practices and the community. That's is there anything you want to sort of add to that, so that people understand that there's a support group here in Australia. They don't have to wait for you to turn up every 6 months.
No, absolutely. Terry McCosker, as you mentioned, and senior members of Resource Consulting Services of RCS back in 2010 recognised the importance of bringing this work centrally into regenerative practices, and I think really went a long way out and very courageously brought it into the menu of offerings alongside of mob grazing and pasture cropping and low stress stock handling and all of the things that they supported and helped come to public attention, and really normalizing it in the agricultural community as just something that one did, not something extraordinary or unusual, but just the next training to take for people managing land. And so as time has gone on, I think we've had about 500 people coming through the trainings and applying it at home. And I've personally been on close to 250 farms. And during that time, we've trained up 4 colleagues, practitioners.
Yeah, so we've got Jem Green,
Yes,
Gary,
Kim,
Deb,
Bliss,
Kim.
Deb McBride. So we've got 4 practitioners in the field now doing the work and starting to teach. And our agenda is to rapidly expand our opportunities for people to get up to speed as practitioners and start sharing the work themselves. So very exciting. We've sort of reached a threshold where we can, I think, exponentially grow and share. Very much supported by a marvellous advisory board and huge support from people who've taken the trainings and, like yourself, come back and wanting to share them with the public. So our agenda is to present this work in the most simple, authentic, natural way so that people can take it and use it for themselves at home, in their families, in their communities, at work, in the office, on the farm if they're in agriculture. But just keep it simple, let it be helpful, let it be normal, and let it ultimately speak for itself.
One last question, because I'm conscious of time. We've got steaks. You've ordered the peppercorn, the whatever steak with peppercorn. I've got whatever steak there is with Diane. Could be T-bone, could be Scotch. We'll find out. Patrick, one last question. What has been we haven't touched on in our little chit chat today, but you've sort of touched on it quickly in the last 2 days, and I know there's probably more tomorrow. What has been the most hair-raising, if you're happy to speak about it in a big spooky house like this, the most hair-raising experience you've had where you've had to move on an entity or a poltergeist or a lost soul? Are you going to talk about? We don't have to. Maybe don't tell us about the most hair raising. Maybe if that's too hair raising to even contemplate again. I don't know. Given that you said today, you said you think you'd probably help move on some thousands of spirits.
It was the one part of the work that I didn't want to do when I started journey, and I discovered it was a part of the work that I absolutely had to do because I couldn't get houses and landscapes clear without attending to that, and so it was an inevitable part of the job scope, the so-called spirit release of earthbound souls who are really just folk like you and me who, at point of death for whatever reason, of confusion, disorientation, attachment or fear, didn't transition fully into the heaven realm and stayed around the earthly realm. And so the process is a very gentle, respectful one, not of sending away, but of facilitating a return home. And so we surround them with love and we create a bridge between heaven and earth held by a celestial being called a psychopomp, whose purpose includes safe transition for us between realms. And then we invite the most loved and trusted members of friend and family group in the heaven realm to come meet and greet and take him home to best party ever, where all the drinks are on God. So very loving and respectful, and when done in a very gentle and loving and respectful way, there's not generally much resistance. Some ghosts are a bit territorial. Some ghosts are fearful and therefore can be aggressive. And sometimes they're muddled up in battlefield sites or massacre sites and have been around for a long time, so they need rather gentle and careful handling. But for the most part, if we approach them with dignity and respect, then then things transition in a fairly peaceful and gentle way. So we don't like to provoke strong reactions, and if we do, we know we haven't done it right.
And what is it about their presence on a farm if you're taken to a farm to do a general check over, and there might be the farmer might say, look, I need some blessings done, and I need some, things are a bit off, and I don't know whether they need more phosphorus or I don't know. There's lots of reasons why I guess someone might engage you to come to a farm. What is the what's the thing about having a spirit who's still around that is necessary to have them gone to then cleanse the whole place? Is it just not the bad apple, but is it just like you can't do it without fixing everything, or is it if they stay they can undo what you've done, or what's the sort of? Do we need to get rid of them all if they're not causing trouble? Is it in their best interests? Are we doing them a favour ultimately to get rid of them?
These are absolutely essential questions. Firstly, I think we have a duty of care to them. And if they're in an earthbound state, it means they're stuck, and they're in a sort of state of arrested, delayed development, because they can't be fully self-expressed while they're still attached to their previous life. The natural process for us is at closure of life to restore, return to soul, family, heaven realm, review and take full learning and wisdom from the life we've had, and then from that space move on either to another incarnation or to some other business that the soul has. So the natural flow of things is for us to move in and out of lives, so if we're stuck, it's considered a pathology of death, and we're facilitating a midwifing of the soul back into heaven, just as we would midwife the soul into human life. So I think first and foremost, it's our duty of care, and you and I wouldn't want to get stuck on the street because we missed the bus, and we'd hope somebody would spot us and call us a taxi. So first for them, and then in terms of their presence, because their mind is still engaged with the circumstances of their own life, they'll tend to hold the creativity and life energy of a place back, and their agendas will still be present and engaged and active. They may seek to put thoughts into our mind to organize circumstances as they believe best, but once they're free and clear and in heaven, then they can truly be our best guides and advisors and our friends in high places, because with that perspective they can support our lives rather than trying to fulfill their lives through us. So they can distort agenda, hold a place back, lock down creativity, and
be mischievous too, I guess.
Depending on their personality. There are happy or peaceful ghosts, but ignorance can be bliss, but it's not that kind of bliss that we want, I think. Yeah. So generally we seek to connect, engage, and lovingly, as we would with our kids, with our friends, support their life and afterlife processes being fruitful and fulfilling and engaged.
Because they can't reincarnate if they haven't got to the next.
That's right.
The next bit.
It's an arresting in time and space, and very frustrating for them because they don't have a body to engage in physical realm, but they're still in physical realm. So it's a sort of disempowered, disengaged, rather unsatisfactory state to be in, I think.
Well, talking about physical realms and unsatisfactory states, we must get to our stakes. What do you reckon?
That would be
That's
lovely.
been awesome. We've run a little bit over time. Patrick, I've been waiting years to do this, and I'm not dissatisfied, but I do feel the need to catch up with you again
Let's do it.
in Vermont or Edinburgh or anywhere you care to. One last thing I'll say is that I read a wonderful book by a man you probably know, he's Scottish, and he is Rock, R-O-C, someone...
Yes,
And
Robert Ogilvy Crombie.
Yeah, and I read his book, Trent Chapman actually lent it to me a couple of years ago, and his book about relationship with nature spirits and talking to Pan in the Botanic Gardens or the Royal Garden, or whatever they call it, in Edinburgh, which I've been to. And I'd read the book after I'd been there, but I'm going to go back and try and find the little bench he sat at when Pan turned up. Fascinating. So I'd so recommend anyone who's navigating this stuff and elementals and nature spirits, and it was so well written, beautifully written, and good yarn.
Wonderful book.
Yeah.
Support that recommendation. I think it's been published and republished and republished. It's in 3 or 4 different titles.
Yep. What's his name?
Robert Ogilvy Crombie.
Crombie, that's it.
And it was The Gentleman and the Fawn. It was Conversations with Fairies. I think it's currently Conversations with Nature Spirits.
Yep.
But yes, if your listeners look for Robert Ogilvy Crombie, they'll find the book easily, and it's available both in print and Kindle versions.
And he had quite an interesting life himself, didn't he? Before it was in his 70s when he actually was sitting there. Was he quite late in life when he took him that long?
Don't remember quite what age he was, but he had, as you say, a very interesting life. Mathematician, scientist, musician, theatre director.
And he took himself away for 10 years in a hut with no power. And
he did. I think he had tuberculosis and had to go and disappear and live in cold.
I think that's why I couldn't.
Cold climate.
Yeah. Crazy. Scotland's good for cold climate.
Scotland's
does it really well. Patrick, let's get ourselves going. So enjoyed our chat, and we'll do this again. We'll do chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Thank you.
And remind me to get this off your phone tomorrow.
It was a pleasure to speak to you.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love your support by subscribing, rating and reviewing The Regenerative Journey on your favourite podcast platform. You help us reach more people and keep the show thriving for seasons to come. Each time you listen, you're choosing to make a positive shift in your own world. And if an episode speaks to you, please pass it on to friends, family or communities who might be inspired too. For more details and episodes, visit www.charliearnott.com.au.